everybody, this is Hammer Striker here. Today I've got the Glock 48 on the table. A couple weeks ago we showed you a Glock 43X that we had purchased. I'd actually gotten the 48 before the 43X, and I thought I'd like the 43X better, so we did that one first. In reality, I found the 48 was a little bit easier to shoot well. That kind of surprised me, but today we're going to talk about the 48 and its features and characteristics. So let's start with, of course, making sure that we have an empty 48, so it's not going to be all bitey. So this is Glock's new, what they're calling the Silver Slimline series. And there's two guns in the series, the 43X, which is basically a little bit higher capacity 43, and this 48 that's in my hand, which is effectively a single stack Glock 19. It wouldn't surprise me for Glock to add more guns to that Slimline series. Theoretically, they could do it with the 26, they could do it with the 17. You know, who knows what guns they'll take off with in this territory. A few of the characteristics of it is that it is a slimmer frame, so the magazines from the other guns are not compatible, unlike the typical Glock pattern. And what I did find is the 43X and the 48 appear to be the exact same frame. The difference is this slide extension, and it has a hole in the bottom of it so that you can gain access to the sight, you know, with the Glock sight tool to swap out the sights. But beyond that, it appears to be the same frame, and it definitely is the same magazines. It comes with these 10-round magazines. So let's talk about the dimensions of the gun. From front to back, it's 7.28 inches. The height is 5.04 inches, and the thickness is 1.10 inches. And of course, that's the major thing. It's a little bit thinner than the double stacks without losing a significant amount of capacity, and it weighs 20.74 ounces. Now, it wouldn't surprise me for the aftermarket to catch up and start coming up with extended base plates and extended magazines and spring kits to add a few more rounds to the capacity of it. But as we're making this video right now, the only magazines available are the 10-round ones. And the good news is, with them being interchangeable between the 43X and the 48, they should be widely available. As far as safety features go, it has the same split trigger that all the Glocks have to prevent inertial trigger pulls if you drop it. It has the internal striker block and striker safety, the plunger style safety. It does have a reversible magazine catch. This one does not have replaceable back straps. So you have the Gen 4 style stippling on it, the little pyramids, and it's easy to hold on to. When you get it in your hand, it stays right where it belongs. And one thing you'll notice, there's no finger grooves. So it's smooth front and kind of a little bit of a curvature to the back. And it does have a nice undercut beaver tail that keeps your hand away from the slide. It'd be very difficult to get slide bit with this gun. From a sights perspective, there's 3 sights available right from the factory. These are the Glock night sights. They're a 3-dot night sight, and they've got a white ring around them, so that during the day, as you can see, they're really easy to see, and at night, of course, they glow a really bright green. They're easy to see at night. There's also the AmeriGlow sights available, and the standard U-dot sights that Glock normally has. And just like the normal Glocks, you know, screw to hold the front sight on, and slide, you know, they're dovetailed at the back, and it does take the standard Glock sights. So if you've got True Glows or something else that you want on it, you can easily do that. Now, Glock has always offered night sights on their guns, but they've been very, very difficult to find. They are kind of changing that. They're making them much more available. This one, I had visited our friends over at Guns Galore, and he had this thing sitting in the case. I had to get home with me. But it was there already ready to go with the night sights. You're going to find these guns to go somewhere between $450 and $550, depending on which version you get. The AmeriGlow being the most expensive and the U-Dot being the least expensive. But overall, the availability of factory night sights readily available, I think, will help this line take off. The coating, as you can see, it's silver, so you know, Glock is starting to get towards having different variations. Now, in the 43X video, I misstated. I said that this was an NDLC coating, and that's not true. It's NPVD, and it probably will be quite durable. The barrel is NDLC, just like the rest of the Gen 5s. This carries forward a lot of the characteristics of the Gen 5s, but the slide itself is NPVD. Now, one of the things you probably already noticed, especially during that little pan shot, is it does have front slide serrations. Just like they had started to release on some of the Gen 5s and the Gen 4 19 Summer Special. And it also has the beveled front for easier holstering. So Glock's listening. They're paying attention to what the market wants. Glock rail, come on. I wouldn't be very surprised that if it took too long for Crimson Trace and others to come up with a trigger guard laser for this. But a lot of other manufacturers on this size gun are putting rails on it. So kind of Glock, you need to get with that one. People want to put their own choice of what you got out there. But again, Crimson Trace and those will catch up fairly quickly. I'm not sure if the 43, the stuff for the 43 and the 42 will fit. This might be a little bit thicker. I haven't had a chance to check that. But I'm sure if it does, they'll be quick to update their websites to state that compatibility or come out with a modified version. It's the same trigger guard. From a holster perspective, this would not fit in most of the holsters for the other Glocks. The frame's a little bit different. But I would expect most holsters that the 48 fit in, the 43X will fit in, and vice versa. Because again, the frame, the trigger guard, and everything is basically the same gun. Now, one thing, we've talked about the trigger a little bit. Let's talk about the trigger. It comes in right around the 5.5 to 6 pound mark, but it doesn't feel as nice as the other ones. And I'm not 100% sure why, but you have your standard fairly short take up, nice crisp wall, and a break. But what I found when shooting it, for whatever reason, it was a little bit difficult to get the trigger to break the way I wanted it to. It does have a nice reset. There's your reset, and that would be all the way out. So it's your standard Glock reset, but this definitely needs a minus connector. And same thing I found with the 42 and 43. And it may just be the fact, the size of the grip and everything. So, of course, Glock doesn't make a factory minus connector, but Ghost does. And what I've been told is that the Ghost 42-43 edge connector, which is a drop-in connector, drops it by about a pound and kind of cleans up the wall a little bit, will fit. I haven't had a chance to do this yet, but I will be doing that, and I'll post an update once I've done this. But I wasn't as happy with the trigger as I might have been, and I think that'll take care of that. Trigger aside, I did find the 48 easy to shoot well. It was easy to group well, it was comfortable to hold, didn't move around in your hand, didn't try to get away from you. And the 48 almost seems to be the one to get of the two. We'll do a comparison, a side-by-side comparison of the 43 and the 48 in the future. But overall, it just was a little bit easier to shoot this well. It might be just that little extra length and that little extra nose weight made it just a little easier to group tight. Let's go ahead and take this thing apart and talk about the internals. So like any Glock, verify it is clear, pull the trigger, kind of squeeze it a little bit, pull down the tabs, and it slides right apart. If you've taken apart one Glock, you've kind of taken apart them all. There's only a few minor differences that you'll look in the newer generation. It does have the nice solid locking block, nice front guides. At the back, you'll see that the fire control group looks a little bit different, but it functions the same. And of course, the connector is under here, and that'll be the part I'll be replacing. But beyond that, if you've taken this apart, any Glock apart, you'll be able to maintain this. It does have one pin for the trigger pivot, and then one for the back. Unlike some of the larger ones which have the 2-pin, they'll have one here and one here. But 43, 42 have proven to be durable. There hasn't been any problems with frame cracking or any of that type of thing. So I don't anticipate any issues with this. Let's talk about the slide now. Now, one thing I have noticed, and the 43 does it too, the guide rod, it sits in there nice and it sits in there solid. It kind of self-centers. But every time you take it apart, it wants to pop out. And I'm not 100% sure why, what it catches on, but it wants to pop out. It has yet to interfere with it coming apart, but sometimes the guide rod will just fall onto the floor or onto the table when you pull it apart, so just be aware of that. It does have a dual captive guide rod like all the Gen 4 and newer Glocks. There's steel components, and then the pin in the center is polymer. Here's your barrel. Now this does have the new Glock Marksman barrel, the GMB barrel. And basically what that gives you, it's a very smooth feed ramp, which all of the Glocks have had for a very long time. It's not mirror polished, but it's very, very smooth. And then you have the hybrid rifling. If I can get a little bit of light in there. So it's the polygonal rifling, which has been typical of Glocks for years since their inception, and kind of a little bit of standard rifling mixed in with it. And that's part of Glock's new marksman barrel, try to improve stability and accuracy. And you'll see there's a little bit of a target crown back in there. So they've kind of refined their barrels, and all of the newer Gen 5s and the slimline series are using that same barrel. Putting it back together, it's just as easy as taking it apart. And again, I did mention that this kind of easily self-centers. Just put your finger on it, and it self-centers. You're back in business. So just like any Glock, fairly easy to maintain. Internally, everything is smooth, machined well. Their machining is flawless. They don't do anything fancy. Well, they're starting to a little bit. Their finishes and the serrations. But overall, Glock, very utilitarian. They function well, they function reliably. And you really haven't had any trouble with either the 43X or the 48 from day one. So let's do some side-by-side comparisons. You might be wondering, why wouldn't I just get a 19 like this one? Now this one happens to be the summer special, and it has the front serrations, but the Gen 4s and newer didn't. And if I set them side by side, actually, let me bring the 43X into this picture too. You can see all three of them. So we have an unloaded 43X. Of course, not surprisingly, you're going to find that the 43Xs, in the 48 are identical in thickness because they're basically the same frame. But sitting next to these two, the Glock 19 is kind of a fat little guy. From a height perspective, they're almost identical. Now, you do lose capacity, of course, because the Glock 19 holds 15 rounds, and the Glock 43X and the 48 hold 10. But what you're giving up, the capacity to get the smaller size. And of course the Glock 19 does have the replaceable back straps, which you lose that on the 48 and 43X. From a height perspective, if I'm going to stand up, you'll see that the 19 and the 48 are almost identical in height, and the 43X is significantly shorter. Now let me set one of them down, because doing it that way with the three of them kind of squeezes them together. I'll set them on their nose, and you can see from nose to beaver tail, the 19 and the 19X height-wise are identical. So if you can carry a 19, you can carry a 19X, and then you might figure, a 48. You might figure, well, why would I bother with the 48? It's obviously the thinness. A lot of people would carry a 19, but it's just a little bit too thick, makes it a little bit too difficult to hide. That's where the 48 comes into play and allows you to hide the gun. And then future we'll do a full comparison of the 19 versus the 48, and we'll do a full comparison of the 43X versus the 48. But I wanted to give you that quick size comparison in case you were thinking, why would I go with one or the other? Primary function of this gun, of course, is concealed carry, but it is fun to shoot at the range. It's comfortable to shoot at the range. It's very controllable. So it's not like some of the thinner concealed carry guns that are no fun at the range. Theoretically would actually work as a home defense weapon, just accepting the 10-round limitation, where you might choose the 19 for your nightstand. So if you like our videos, please give us a thumbs up, share, subscribe, click that bell if you do subscribe. Check us out on Facebook and Patreon, and have a great day. Thank you.